So you do a lot of reading, and you read a lot of short fiction, short nonfiction, novels, and so forth, and you have a little bit of that writing bug. So how would you get started? So I teach creative nonfiction at Western. My course is called The Art of the Personal Essay. And so in that course, what we do is we focus on learning how to write short personal essays, which are, it's a new form. Well, it's not a new form, but it's a genre that has gotten a lot of attention lately. Memoir is really becoming popular, but there's a real place for short nonfiction, so blog posts, articles about the back page of the the facts and arguments section in the Globe and Mail has those essays every day. And so people like telling their own stories. And one of the things that that happens is we want to tell stories, but we don't know how to start. Okay, so in my class, how do we start? Well, we start by trying to get our heads around the idea that I don't have to have climbed Everest to have an interesting story to tell. You know, the best stories are ordinary, but they have resonance with people. So I always talk to my students about the difference between personal writing and private writing. So it's not journal writing. No one's going to be interested in reading most people's journals. But it's writing that has an audience in mind. So we expect that someone's going to read our writing. And there are two things going on in every piece of personal writing. There's the situation, which is what happened. Like, I went to Italy, and it wasn't until I got off the plane that I realized I don't know any Italian. And then there's the story. And that's the emotional level. That's the real thing that I want to say as a writer. So the story in that case might be something really deeper about how, for the first time in my life, I realized that I really need to communicate with people in order to feel a sense of belonging, or I'm not as competent as I thought I was as a traveler, or, there could be all kinds of things that we realize about ourselves as we go through our daily lives and do these things that create context for our emotional change. And so when we're doing this kind of writing, so you can think about the interesting things that you've done in your life, but think about them in terms of the things that really changed you. Another way of thinking about it is the difference between anecdote and story. We all have funny things that happen in our lives, but if they just stay at the level of anecdotes, just stuff that we tell at a dinner party, say, that's not enough to get people to want to read. People want to read things that resonate with them emotionally. You're really trying to create some identification with the reader. So if you think of, as a reader, the stuff that's really drawn you in, maybe you haven't hiked in the Arctic, but if it's a story that has some emotional resonance with you, then that's a story that's going to keep you reading. So that's something you want to think about, is what have I done in my life that's actually changed me? And then document that change. Talk about what you were like before. Talk about that moment, the moment, we call it the moment of epiphany, that change that happened. And tell it as a scene, like what was happening. I was in an Italian bakery, and there were all these cookies, and I couldn't tell them which one I wanted because I didn't have the words to say, that chocolate one over there with the raspberry center. I didn't have the words, so I tried pointing, and they kept getting it wrong, and and I realized, oh my goodness, I can't communicate with, whatever the big insight would be. And then what was I like after? After that, I had a real acute sense of not belonging, and that made me maybe think back to some moment in my time. You know, these things can take you in all kinds of directions. So document that moment of epiphany, and then what was the resolution? You know, like I said, what were you like after that? So there is a kind of simple formula. You know, what changed you? What were you like before? What was that big moment where you realized something? And then what happened after? What were you like after? And it's the internal change that you want to document. And I think if you go back and look at a lot of the personal writing that you've ever read that really speaks to you, you'll see that the author is narrating change in her life or his life, change that happens internally.